Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has a goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. Bill Nye the Science Guy said it best. The main thing you can do about climate change isn't recycling, it's voting. And that's why in episode 59 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, I am going to discuss a few ways you can use your voice to vote for the environment this year during the November 8th elections. Now, I want to be clear, since politics can often be polarizing, I am not going to use this to tell you who to vote for or who I support. I'm simply going to overview a few of the reasons why local elections are so important, along with how to find more information about your state candidates and the issues or policies that they may support. I also want to express that every single election is important and deserves your vote, no matter how small that election may be. Local elections do make a really big difference, and all of the towns, cities, villages, wherever you live in the United States, they do operate with different structures. But they all do elect officials that carry out three government functions, which are executive, legislative, and legal. So, for instance, the mayor or city managers would be in charge of executive functions, while the city council or commissioners would implement legislation. Then the district attorney implements those legal functions. These local policies and local elections are so important because this is what really impacts your daily life in many different realms, because these are the people that are making decisions surrounding things like parks and recreation, public transportation, waste management, school policies, affordable housing, and so much more. And many federal policies, they do actually start at a local level, or they gain a lot of traction at a local level. When certain laws are in the idea stage or are being tabled by Congress, more movement and action can take place on that local level, and a lot of that movement starts to happen during the elections. And in the 2020 election, Rock the Vote reported that only 2/3 of the eligible voters actually cast a vote, even though we had a record turnout of 158.4 million voters. And local elections, they have a historically even lower turnout. Some of the officials that are elected win with very, very small margins, and sometimes, depending where you live, they can win just from single-digit votes. And I think it's really important to remember that our representatives only represent the people that vote. Both the House and the Senate are filled with elected officials from each state. And members of the House of Representatives are up for election every 2 years, but Senate members are generally reelected every 6 years. And since Congress is made up of elected officials selected by the people, if we are dissatisfied with how our congressional representatives are voting to pass certain laws or policies, then we need to make our voice heard by voting to make sure that they are not reelected, or to vote to ensure the people that are passing the laws and policies we support and that align with our values are reelected. I totally get that it's easy to feel like your vote doesn't matter at all, especially when you're voting on a local level. But actually, since many local elections have such a low turnout, that is when votes can be the most impactful. When it comes to environmental policies, it is imperative that environmentalists use their vote. The more environmentalists that vote in every election, the more politicians will begin to shift to appeal to those environmental voters. And the more politicians that start to listen to what environmentalists and scientists have to say, by shifting to appeal to those constituents, the more pro-climate legislation begins to pass. So, how do you research candidates and ballots to see if they align with those values or they are pro-climate, or they fall in the realm of supporting pro-climate legislation? So, state and local elections generally receive less media coverage, as you likely notice, but if you pay a lot of attention to local news, you'll find a lot of information out there. But it can still be hard to know who is on the ballot and how to find out more information about each individual candidate. An easy way to start is to use an online ballot generator like Vote 411. And I'll include the link to this and any other websites that I mention in the show notes so you can check them out later. The Vote 411 website provides a sample ballot, and it includes a list of the candidates along with the issues that are most important in your voter area. You can also use nonpartisan online resources like League of Women Voters to get more comprehensive looks into the candidate backgrounds and their stances on all of the issues. I found that those nonpartisan websites, they have a pretty big mix of information, but they can be quite helpful in providing resources for all questions regarding voting and ballots. Another place to look is candidate websites, and although these tend to be biased in the candidate's favor, it doesn't hurt to take a look at them, and I like to compare the candidate websites to any nonpartisan information as well. And then another place to look that I'm sure many of us already use on a daily basis is social media. Social media is a great way to see how candidates interact on a daily basis, especially with individual constituents. This gives us a clear view into how they represent themselves, what some of their core values are, and what their priorities are during the election process. What the candidates are saying is really important, but I always find the most useful information when I follow the money and who is supporting them on a larger scale. So look at who's supporting the campaign monetarily and what each candidate has for endorsements. If you are looking at this from an environmental lens, then always look to see if they have any well-known environmental organizations that endorse them and their campaign. This can be a little more difficult for these midterm elections because we'll see this a lot more on a federal level, but some well-known environmental organizations still can endorse even local candidates. So take a look at that. If you can't find information about environmental organization endorsements, then look to see who supports their campaign financially. The Federal Election Commission website has information regarding any federal candidates, and then for state candidates, take a look at the Secretary of State's website. They should have a candidate financial page. For local candidates, the county registers have financial information for candidates, but some areas won't post this online, some will. Others will require that you go into the office and request it in person. All of that is a lot to ask voters to do, especially in that deep of a dive the day before the election. And that's where other tools like no fossil fuel money can come into play. On this website, you can easily see and find any of the candidates that signed the no fossil fuel money pledge. And I think this came into play in 2017, maybe? Don't quote me on that. And this pledge essentially means that the said politician and their campaign did not knowingly accept any contributions over $200 from lobbyists or executives from fossil fuel companies, among other things. There are a few other requirements for that pledge, but that's just a general overview. So a lot of that is probably a lot of information to kind of take in, and maybe it's a little bit short notice, but if you're going into the election and you haven't voted quite yet and you need a little bit more information, it doesn't hurt to just browse some of those things. Maybe check any of the voter resources pamphlets that were sent out in the mail to you as well. And I think it's important to remember that a vote is still a vote, and that every single vote matters. And when we are using our votes to align with our values, then we can start to see a lot more positive change in the area around us. And to close out this kind of rambly episode, I just want to say that in the opinion of many climate and political experts, the most important midterm outcome for climate change may be who controls the House of Representatives. And according to a Guardian article published on November 3rd, they quoted that 87% of voters want the government to crack down on big oil, and they want the government to have more pro-climate policies in place. So with that, get out there and vote. We have a chance to move things in the right direction, so let's take it. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can still find me on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book for daily updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with a shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.